Do you feel you're being pulled in different directions? You can't find a place between the rhetoric and all those competing voices? You don't know where to turn? Don't know what to trust? Or you just want to hear a lively discussion about relevant issues without picking sides or all the mudslinging? Well, welcome to the Rock Pile. Join us at Lewis and Oma. We talk about faith, culture, and a bunch of other messy subjects. You can agree or disagree. It'll be lively, likely messy, but we hope interesting. Come on our journey to understand. No rock throwing, just a rock pile. Welcome.
This is episode 8 in season 2
of the
Rock Pile.
Yes, thank you. Welcome back. Last week, last episode, we talked about, or where we're talking about the election. And so we've talked about progressivism and progressives in the past. And so we're going to continue a little bit more on the kind of giving individuals a place to go to find things and to talk about progressivism, where it started, and why we keep seeing this raise its head even now.
That's right. We do. We hear it because they're always talking about the fact that our Constitution is not relevant for today.
Right. They say it's an antiquated document written 200 years ago by a bunch of people, and they'll throw race and gender in there, and just to make it sound like it's irrelevant because of that.
Mm-hmm. Muddy it up.
Yeah, and muddy up the water and create division, which is the key in all of that anyway. And so they say, well, these individuals were living in a rural economy, and it was small with only 13, not many people there. The Industrial Revolution wasn't the way it is, So name the situation, and they keep bringing this up. Say, well, it didn't respond to modern technology or the development of people or educational capabilities now, or intellectual ability, our ability to reason. We've come more developed. It goes on and on.
Yes,
and
it
on.
does. And they forget the fact that one of the main things of our Constitution, which is so wonderful, is that it gives the states authority.
Yeah, the prime authority. Well,
yes.
People through their states. Yes. Yeah, it does. Because the whole point in the beginning, like we talked about last time, was to keep the power and the responsiveness of the government at the local level. Because those are the individuals who understood in their area what they wanted and needed for that particular area. So what goes on in Florida may not necessarily be as important to somebody, say, like in Maine. And that's the issues, if you go to the Federalist Papers, they talk about. And you've got, during that period of time, we talked about the Federalists, the Anti-Federalists. You've got Thomas Paine, Common Sense. You've got the two treatises of government by Locke. I mean, you've got all these things that are written during that period of time. It talks about these types of things that were going on or had occurred, because of the British government, its monarchy, and its parliament, and the French Revolution, etc. Those all played a part in that. And that design that they chose, the Constitutional Republic, was to find a hybrid that would address those issues and still maintain the concentration of power at the local level of people expressed upward to a very limited government.
That's right.
That's what it was for.
That was exactly, yeah.
And that's just talking off the cuff. I'm sure there's people out there that got PhDs.
Oh, yeah, but we're just doing an
a very basic overview. And if
not a treatise.
No, but no.
Yeah.
So we have this. We talked about progressivism, and there's some names you need to be familiar with: Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Frank Goodenow, Dewey, Coley, and what's his name? The other Roosevelt, Franklin.
Yeah, Franklin.
Roosevelt. And so
Theodore and Franklin were both progressive.
So both were progressive. Franklin brought it more to fruition because of the Depression, World War II, and then Nick carried on.
The longevity of his.
Yeah, well, so Wilson was elected in 1912. Theodore Roosevelt was running against him on, I think he was the Bull Moose Party at the time.
Right.
And so they ran on essentially both of them running kind of on the progressive ticket, and Wilson won the election. And Wilson implemented it, and he has a lot of writings. He's written a book. I think the book where he took all his speeches. I think it's called The New Republic. That's the book he wrote, and it talks about progressivism. And I've included in the notes some links to these actual documents that they've stored in PDF form that were actually written during that period of time. And it specifically, people need to read them. They're only maybe 10, 12 pages. But it gives you an idea what they believe progressivism or being a progressive was and what it amounted to then. So then you ask yourself,
what is it today?
What is it today? Is it the same? And so you think of, okay, all the little sound bites that you hear, then you understand where to place them, because these aren't new.
No, these ideas are not new.
These are not new. What you hear today is not new. They tend to throw a lot of things out that has to sound that's Marxist. The Communist Manifesto with Marx and Engels.
Oh, a lot of times they're just flat out quoting.
Right. And It's one thing to go to college and learn the different governmental forms and then understand why yours is different. It's a whole other thing to indoctrinate people and say, well, this is a better way.
That's exactly what we've had.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about that at other times where we're kind of coming down here trying to get the rubber to the road for an overused cliche, but that's what we're trying to do. And I guess that's redundant even.
So let's see some examples that are going on right now.
Well, let's talk about some things that basically show you that progressivism is still in play. Okay, progressivism at the time, because they believed that the Constitution was antiquated, they believed that the people that we choose to represent them, or us, were not sophisticated or experts in certain fields that needed to be addressed in social and commerce and economics, etc. So what they did was they believed that they needed to have these agencies that were staffed by people who were subject experts.
Right. This is how we got our ABC
organizations,
yes. All these bureaucracies that are not elected.
Right, but they were brought in for that reason.
Yes.
And so, but the one thing that really was interesting at the time when they did it, when they started them, you had to both be an expert and you had to be a progressive.
Oh, how nice.
Well, that's because what they said was, if you weren't progressive, you wouldn't believe in what you're doing. Because the person who's bought into the idea of progressive would be the person that would be working in an agency to get the best outcome as an expert. Doesn't matter what you and I actually want. This is what the experts believe, and because you're not an expert, you don't know what you want.
And the definition of progressive today.
Well, people will call them progressives because it sounds better than liberal.
Yes.
Because a liberal today is not what a liberal was then.
Yes, and a progressive now is not what it used to be.
No, they're not the same. They
No.
use the term because people say progressive because it sounds better.
Yeah.
Like progressive sounds a lot better than a reactionary.
Yeah. Yes.
But
like progressive. Oh, we're moving forward.
Right.
We're doing for the better of the people.
And essentially that's what they're trying to sell. And
Yes.
some of the stuff the progressives did were not necessarily bad ideas.
No.
The problem is you took you're circumventing the Constitution because you're negating the separation of powers.
Yes.
You're negating them, or at least trying to get around them.
So this is affecting the checks and balances.
Yes, because what it's done is Congress has delegated. Now there is I think it's Article 1, Section 2, where it talks about they can't delegate their power. Well, they have. And the Chevron case, which I cited in below, talks about that kind of a limitation of what that is. But essentially, we've said this before in a couple episodes past, Congress passes this massive bill, like 2,000 pages, and then the administrative agencies flesh that out because they're the experts of how they're going to apply it. The problem with that is all the other stuff that's in it. And
Yes.
no one knows what's really going on.
Yes.
And the goal of writing a law that everybody can understand,
It's
don't
been
do that.
lost.
It's been lost.
I mean, look at that 2,000-page one. Oh, my
Right.
gosh.
And the progressives wanted the executive to be kind of this super legislator, the person who motivates and says, hey, I've got a plan and we're going to run with this plan. And notice how since Roosevelt, that's exactly what they do. They get up and say, I got this plan to change the world. We're going to just feed everybody and do all these things. And I'm going to go, it's like high school or kindergarten. I'm going to give candy to everybody every day if you vote for me. And what? You hear this all the time. They pledge this stuff. And in reality, if you know how the system works, at least have a basic understanding, they can't accomplish what they tell you they're going to do. And they know it too.
Right. They really do.
Like this election. I'm going to go up there and we're going to change this stuff. Well, how do you plan on doing that if you don't have a supermajority?
Yes.
And guess what? The Senate and the House both have to agree on whatever bill.
Yes, they
so
do.
if you want to promote a bill, that's great. Great idea. But you got to get the Senate to pass it. And guess what just happened? The Senate is controlled by one party and the House is controlled by another party. What is the likelihood that something's actually going to get done?
Not very much.
Not very much. And in my perspective, that's okay with me because I really don't like the way it's going. But that's my personal opinion. So we've got to figure out what we're going to do. But this is all about this taking away the checks and balances. And this is the way it's supposed to work when it comes to the Congress. But the problem is you've got a person in the White House who's the same party as one side of Congress. And guess what's going to happen? It's nothing. Nothing's going to happen unless they cooperate. But it's so divided that they're not going to cooperate.
No, they're not.
Look at the elections. Well,
yeah.
I'm not an election denier. We had an election. But I'm smart enough to understand statistics. And stuff doesn't look good.
No.
And that's another old cliche. If it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck.
It's got to be a duck.
It's going to be a duck.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And they have all the earmarks. This election has really brought out the division.
Yes.
They've really strove hard.
Yes. And they've done a lot of things because fear sells.
Yeah, sadly.
Short snippets of fear sells people because that's what they tag to. And if it's an entity, social media or a Mockingbird media, something that's talking out there and they're listening to, and that's their.
And they repeat it all the time. And after a while, you just assume it's correct.
Well, it's because people believe what the people are telling them is correct.
Yes.
And they don't have a base by which to go and reference that, nor do they take the time because they're distracted. Mm-hmm. They all have lives to live. And
sure.
you sent your representative
Absolutely.
out there not so you can sit here and say, I don't want to think about what's going on, because as a good citizen, you're supposed to be paying attention. And we'll give everybody the benefit of the doubt that they are. But a lot of people are not because they're focused on paying money to get gas and paying money to pay for all this inflationary things that we're experiencing because of the decisions that are being made.
Oh, absolutely.
So they're not paying attention, and they think that people says, oh, this is going to happen because this group's going to pass this. Well, hello, you have the control. You did have the control of the entire Congress. What's the likelihood of these other people passing anything?
Yeah.
Not very likely.
Yeah.
Because people don't realize, they forget, that either the Senate or the House can author a bill, but the other chamber has to basically approve it.
Oh, yes, they do.
If they don't approve it, it goes to a committee.
Right.
It could die there. It could
Right.
die in any other one of the House chambers. But the thing is, it ain't going to go to the president's desk without that. If it does,
It's vetoed.
he can veto it.
Yeah.
And you know what? They don't have 2/3 majority in either one of them. So guess what? Nothing
Nothing's
gets
done.
done. So when they tell you the sky is falling, it's not falling.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, this is a time to say, well, we just assume you just stop and let's figure out what's going on, because we don't need more laws. You're not required to pass laws. We expect you to do what you need to do to maintain the government and do what we need. But that doesn't mean you've got to go around and find things to do. How about investigate some of the stuff that just currently happened?
Yeah.
We would like to know why that happened.
Right.
Why somebody walked off with $30 billion or whatever the number was. Where'd
Yes.
that go?
Yeah,
Well,
that
how about all that
Bitcoin
money?
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how about all that money that
Oh, my
disappears?
gosh. Yes.
Where's all this money going? How about an accounting of what happened with all the money that goes overseas to Europe? Hey, I'd like to know
I'd
where
like
that
to
money's
know.
being spent.
Yeah.
Hey, what about all those biolabs that are going on out there? That's
Things
just,
are not being addressed.
they're not investigating anything, and it's time.
No.
There's a laptop that they need to look into.
Yes, there is.
There's a lot of things that can be done.
Yes.
Passing laws, okay, you can do that too.
There's islands that have been exposed, but nobody ever hears anything about it.
Yeah, people went to jail based on a book, but no one ever got to see what the evidence
Yeah,
was.
what was
and
in that little black book.
Nobody
Yeah.
pursued that book. But
Yeah.
somebody's in jail for life because of it. So, there's got to be evidence in there. Hey, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying there anything. I'm just saying
No, but there's
somebody
a lot
ought
of
to look.
inconsistencies
I am a
that
lawyer.
are not being addressed.
And I'm a lawyer, and I know there's evidence. She didn't go to jail because there wasn't any. So there's somebody's names in there, and they know what those names are. And they're not looking into it like they should. And there's a reason.
So with this division, what kind of government do we really have?
Well, we're supposed to have a constitutional republic. And
Obviously.
we talked about that last
Right.
episode. But what we really have is an oligarchy.
That's what I thought.
And so what you have is an oligarchy cloaked in a constitutional republic. And the oligarchy is the uniparty. It's the people up there that are making decisions and deciding ahead of time what they're going to do. Because they're not really responding to us. They say they are. Well, we have this mandate from the people. I'm sorry, you didn't pick up any extra seats in the Senate by one, and you lost the House. That's not a mandate for anything other than we're kind of tired of what's going on. That's what's really a mandate is. We're kind of fed up. We're up to my grandma used to say, the quitty-quatty.
Quitty-quatty, yeah.
I'm up to the quitty-quatty here because you guys are doing nothing. We're sending people up there, and all they're doing is they're hoping to be popular. We didn't send you up there to be a popularity contest, and no one promised you to live up there and be in charge like you think you are for the rest of your entire life. You're only up there for 2 years. That's it. If you get reelected, good. It's because you made us happy. But you know what really gets me going is that you're not up there to make the people in Utah happy. You're up there to get us happy in Florida. And if people in Utah or Nevada, pick a state, are not happy with you, I don't care. It doesn't matter. You need to get along? Yeah, but that's not your priority. Your priority is to do what we tell you to do. If you don't like it, sign off, go back, we'll get somebody else to do it for us.
That's right.
That's the way it's supposed to work.
We didn't put you in there to become a lifelong politician.
No, don't give up your day job.
Yes.
Because there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee. So whatever you were doing ahead of time, make sure you can still do that when you get back.
Yes.
If you're a lawyer, you can still practice law. Whatever you want to do, that's fine. But you didn't go up there because you need to make everybody in the planet happy and agree with them.
Right.
You don't have to agree.
Yes.
You don't. And you don't have to do what they say. You have to do what we want.
The people.
So you're representing us. Doesn't matter one party or the other, the people. If you're in my district and our district is 97% one party, well, guess what you're going to be doing? What we want.
But now, they're not.
If they're not, you're still got to be receptive to what they want. And you still have to understand what they want. That's why they voted for you. So when you get up there, you need to be able to articulate what we think should happen. We may not win. That's okay. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Okay, let's look back and get a better perspective here.
Yeah, well, part of the thing is we've been talking about is we're kind of going around in circles, but that's okay. It's just linear is one thing.
You've never been linear.
No, never been linear. So let's talk about classics. And, there's this funny quote I wrote down here. It says, Mark Twain defined a classic as something that everyone wants to have read and nobody wants to read it.
It's true because it makes me think of all the people that they're standing in front of all these books and you sometimes think to yourself, there is no way they've read all those things. But
They could have. Yeah,
they could have.
But it makes it, think it's the impression is.
It's important.
Oh, I've got this book back here, War and Peace.
Yeah.
Have you read that? Well,
no, but it's on my list.
It's on my list to read.
And I have it back here.
I got my top 100. I'm on the first one, but that's okay. And that's good to have a goal.
It is.
So, we talked about oligarchy and those types of things. And, it's, so the one thing about people and think about founding fathers and going back and understanding where they came from is that the distinction they're making is, sorry about the stutter, but I'm trying to get the right word, is between the human condition. We being Christians, Christ followers, we understand the nature of humanity. Right. We have a worldview that relates to that. It doesn't make people bad or good. It just means that we have a propensity, like Paul says, we don't do the things we should be doing and we do the things we shouldn't be doing. So we have this conflict. We understand that. The founders have understood that. People through history have understood that. But as we got into the Enlightenment and and all the other periods of time, they started to believe that humanity was increasing in its sophistication and understanding the world, and all these revolutionary ideas were coming out and were becoming better.
And it crowded out any kind of faith.
Well, yes, and it also they believed that they were evolving into a better human being.
Right.
Whereas you saw, social evolution, you had all these other types of things pop out, and so you get this understanding that people are getting better, or supposed to get better. But the thing is, ask yourself. You hear people say, "Well, our government's like the book 1984, George Orwell's book," and you hear quotes all the time.
Yeah, you do. That is kind of popular right now.
Big Brother.
Yeah.
But there's Double Think.
Yeah.
And things like that. And but there's other book he wrote, Animal Farm. We've talked about it before in a couple other episodes. And both of those, and there's a book called Yevgeny Zaramatov. I'm mispronouncing his last name, but Yevgeny is his first name. He wrote a book on we, and it was a sci-fi dystopian. It's just like Hunger Games.
Yeah,
And-
that's a modern day one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and you've got.
I think of Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, and that's
That's the
kinda
basis of man, right?
But humanity, there's always somebody going to be on top. So if you think
Right.
of oligarchy, you've got an elites up there that think they're on top. And remember that old movie? What was that movie we watched watched it 3 or 4 times, and it talks about the people being on top, and someone's going to get more because they believe they deserve more because they're contributing more. So like in the Flight of the Phoenix.
Oh, yes. Oh, that was a good movie.
With James
Stewart.
James Stewart. And remember the person who was designing the plane, I won't give it away.
Yeah.
But he was stealing
he
the
was
water.
stealing water.
He was stealing
Yeah.
water from the rations, and his whole defense was that I'm doing more than you.
more important.
Yes, I'm more important and more instrumental in getting us out of here than you are. So I
I'm
need
deserving.
to, despite
Yeah.
the fact that there's it's sweltering heat in the middle of Libyan desert.
Yeah.
So they talk about this, types of behavior that you see in totalitarian governments, and these books, We in 1984, were all written in the 40s, during,
Yes, and they've seen it.
they've seen it,
Yes.
they've experienced it. Now, I think everybody, and it's a long read, should read Alexander Solzhenitsyn's.
That's harsh.
The Gulag Archipelago.
Yeah, that's a harsh
You
book.
want to understand what it's like to have to go through that. You need to read it. It's tough. It's like as tough as reading The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by I can't think of the name, but anyway, it was written. I read it, and it's tough to understand how that all the
Anybody
stuff.
could be that cold and calculated and
It's amazing the amount of
With
people that were
no-
arrested.
Yeah.
And people were executed
Yeah.
and put in prison 1, 2, 3 times. He uses the term tenor, 10 years
10
here,
years,
stick you over
everybody
there
had
and move.
children. Yeah.
Children,
It's
women, and
horrid.
it's so if you want to understand the nature of a totalitarian government, which exactly
Yeah.
these gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen who wrote these books
Yeah.
did, you just read that
Yeah.
Gulag Archipelago and you'll
Yeah.
see it fleshed out in
Stalin,
reality.
Marxist.
And it didn't get
Yeah.
published until 1970s.
Right.
And this happened to him in the 40s and 50s.
Right.
He was in the military, so I won't spoil the book. It's a good read. It's not a dense read, and you don't have to know everything about Russian history or the names, but you get the general idea.
Of where that will go when it's to the extreme.
Because people think that when you're talking about being on top and the Lord of the Flies, socialism says everybody should get everything, and it should all be distributed, and that's just a very simple definition, and I'll leave the definition of socialism on the bottom. But the fact of the matter is, in every place where socialism plays, there's always somebody who has more.
That's right.
Now, the idea of everybody having everything equal
It's never going to happen.
is never going to happen because there's always somebody who wants to be on top.
Right.
And that goes back to human nature. I'm not being a pessimist.
No, this is just
Just the
history.
reality
It's-
we live in.
yeah.
That's why we have checks and balances.
Exactly,
And I
our
think it was
government.
Madison, I think who said, or Adams said, if men were angels, you wouldn't need a government, and the government was run by angels, you wouldn't need it, and
A constitution.
you wouldn't need
Yeah.
the checks and balances.
Right. You wouldn't.
And so I'm sure I'm chopping that quote up, but you get the point.
The gist
point
of
is
it.
that the whole thing was they understood the nature of humanity, and people want to be on top, and the push because of Greek, the examples they saw back in the day with Greeks and Romans and all the way up to the medieval times, they knew exactly what would happen with people. And the progressives believed, well, we're different now. We're not. One only has to get on the internet to find out just how not different we are.
That's exactly right.
You write something out there and you can get 15 to 20 people screaming, and snarky invectives just because they don't agree with you. And look at Twitter. They don't like the fact that somebody else has it and it's opening up for free speech, or people. It's still not free, but it's better than it was. And what happens? They want to shut it down. Why? Because it's not their toy anymore.
That's right. It's truth.
They can't sit there and tell you what to think.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think we need to end this. I've been pretty much fired up. Probably got a lot of people irritated. Probably going to get lots of comments about how squirrely we are, but that's okay. So, being Christ followers as we proclaim, I think we ought to do something like pray at the end of it. How about that, Oma? You want to pray?
I like that.
Okay, let's do that.
And I want to encourage you to read Psalms 140 and think about that when you pray. But Lord, in Jesus' name, we just glorify you. We thank you for this. You are God over our country. And we thank you that you are doing a good work. We're going to trust in you that you are our deliverer and our restorer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Oma. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining and sticking with us today. Please subscribe to Cairn's Rockpile Podcast. We're on most podcast sites, Spotify, Podbean, Apple, Google, Samsung. Also, our website and spotlighted organization are in the podcast description. Please share it with your friends, family, or anyone you know. Join us next week. Until then, stand firm, be the light, and most importantly, pray. Blessings.